you and your colleagues were very gracious to come to our last conference and talk a little bit to leaders about how to think about oversight as they're designing policy. As part of your conversation, I remember you were encouraging people to ask some, think about the questions they needed answered. I think, I don't know if that's the way you would say, but to think about it, to think in advance about what questions you're going to want answered, just to be able to determine whether something was successful, and in the spirit of, again, not to point fingers about or to place blame, but to be able to shift resources as necessary, to be able to say, okay, we tried that and that's not working, let's try it a different way. So when you're thinking about designing this policy, what are some of the questions you would encourage people to have in mind that they're going to want to be able to understand on the back end?
Right. So I think the first thing to do, and it's the reason I like to focus on the insights you get from local government, is that at local government, you don't have the same sort of separation of powers phenomenon. I mean, obviously there is a difference between the city council and the mayor's office, but they tend to be much more connected and able to partner with each other. So that's really important because it gets you over this kind of excuse that lawmakers tend to have, which is like, okay, we've written the law and we've appropriated the money. Now it's your turn.
Mm-hmm.
And you check out a little bit, you move on to the next thing. And what we train people to do at the Levin Center is to think of it much more in a cyclical way. I mean, if I had a a whiteboard behind me, I'd be showing you a cycle, and essentially policymaking and problem solving really is what the business we should be in, is much more iterative. You try things, you assess the situation first and gather information through the preliminary stages of oversight, and then maybe you do need a new rule or a new law. But before you move forward with that, you do a thorough examination of what the system has now and what it can absorb, and what new requirement what a new requirement would actually do to the system you've already got. And that's where we don't have nearly enough attention paid. It's so easy to just draft a bunch of bills. In a lot of legislatures, they call it the bill mill. That's how they view the legislature. And most of the resources in legislatures are given over to drafting legislation. They have a lot of talented attorneys and analysts who draft these bills, a fraction of which ever become law. Why can't they, and this is what we advocate for, is shift some of those resources toward analyzing and working with the executive branch to better understand the system that we're all operating in, so that, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right?
Mm.
If you're a lawmaker, everything looks like a statute, like you've got to draft a statute to solve a problem. And I think over the years of my experience working in Congress and serving in the state legislature in oversight roles, I've gotten out of that thinking. And now I think that the way to approach this has got to be much more systemic. How is the system working? How well can we understand it? We have data tools at our disposal now that people could only dream of, even 10 years ago, let alone, 50 or 100 years ago. So we have a lot of tools at our disposal, and AI can be a really important opportunity for us if we decide to use it. And people are starting to experiment with it. So there's a lot there. But those are the fundamental questions: is what is the system? How is it operating? And the other thing we very much emphasize is, when you're asking questions, make them open-ended.
Hmm.
A lot of lawmakers, again, you've got a pet idea, you've got a bill or an agenda, and you want to push that through. And so you do oversight in service of that agenda. That's not really the right way to go about it. If you want to solve a problem, it's best to suspend your assumptions a bit and ask open-ended questions that are basically the following: what do we not know now that if we did know, we could really make progress on this issue? And if you're open, then you tend not to go down, blind alleys that lead nowhere. We always cite this example. Senator Levin, when he was serving, got very concerned about oil spills in the Great Lakes. His constituents were coming forward and telling him about these oil spills. And a lot of people assumed, well, because of, high profile accidents that have occurred with oil tankers, they said, well, we've got to crack down on the the shipping and the industry that ships oil through the Great Lakes. Luckily, Senator Levin and his staff didn't narrow their scope immediately. They asked open-ended questions about how how do oil spills occur and where do they occur and how often, and a lot of basic questions like that. And what they found was that 95% of the oil spills have nothing to do with the shipment of oil. They have almost everything to do with the way oil is handled at ports,
Mm.
at the facilities where the exchange is going on. So the focus needed to be very much on changing the way those facilities operated. So that's just an example of an open-ended question that gets you in the right mind frame and moves you in the right direction versus one where you could spend years wasting a lot of time and taxpayer money solving a problem that doesn't exist.